Now, for the next half an hour, we're going to be paying a very special tribute to someone who was very loved here and, of course, by you at home. It was 10 years this week that actress and loose woman Lynda Bellingham sadly passed away. Some special tributes from friends and family coming up. But first, Colleen is going to be joined by Kaye and Nadia, who also knew Lynda well, for a look back at her incredible life.
Born in Montreal in Canada in 1948, Lynda decided by the age of 11 she wanted to be an actress, and an actress she became. Her first break in television was in an early 70s series called Kate, before spending a year as nurse Hilda Price in General Hospital. Lynda stayed in the business for over 40 years and became a regular face in British film and on television. It was a starring role in All Creatures Great and Small, playing Helen Herriot, that really got Lynda noticed.
Bert Chapman's first, and Susie, of course.
Susie?
He's Labrador. Don't you remember?
I loved everything about Lynda, because Lynda was, and when I say this with the best of hearts, she was a typical actress, everything that I love about really smart, bright, ferocious actresses. She always had like a million brilliant stories. She was always the person in the room that everybody wanted to look at, and incredibly kind to, at that time, actresses like me and many other actresses.
Trimmed that hedge this morning so the interflora could get through.
You did it very nicely.
Oh, come on, let's go back to your place.
No!
I'm so sorry. I didn't realise it was such a scary idea.
Lynda's career continued to soar into the 90s. One of my personal favourites was her role in the award-winning ITV drama written by Sally Wainwright, At Home with the Braithwaites.
I think it's high time you buckled down and started trying to prove yourself worthy of the trust she's put in you. For her sake, if not for your own. Virginia!
But it wasn't just some of our top dramas Lynda starred in. She was also a regular in between the programmes as well.
She put me forward to play her daughter-in-law in the OXO ads. Those OXO ads, I mean, we all loved them, didn't we? And they were iconic.
Hi, Hi, Mum.
I mean, who doesn't remember Lynda as the OXO mum? You know, she was just that very sort of wonderful, warm presence with that cheeky glint in her eye. But actually, when you met her in real life, she was that times 1,000.
Lynda may have been the nation's mum for over 16 years, but there were two boys who had her heart. Her beloved sons, Michael and Robert.
She loved those boys so much. One of those mums that, like, once you've had a glass of wine, she would start, my boys, oh, my boys. And her eyes would just fill with tears, just the emotion of having these two beautiful boys. She loved being an actress, but she loved being a mum so, so much. They were so precious to her.
As well as having hours' worth of showbiz stories, Lynda had always been open and honest about her life and her loving family in interviews. And after some fabulous appearances as a guest, producers at Loose Women were keen to sign Lynda up.
First day at school for our brand new loose lady is the wonderful Lynda Bellingham.
You just do not meet many Lynda Bellinghams in your lifetime, and when you do, you never forget it. She was sunshine in a human form with a few electric storms thrown in, and I remember just thinking, wow, so ready to laugh. You kind of knew you had someone special.
Bellas fitted right in no time.
That thing about the cuckoos is really quite sad, because must it be that all the other birds have heard about the cuckoo in the nest? They're waiting for him now. You know?
She was never afraid to say what she thought.
You're as bad as everybody else.
That crime is beyond comprehension, Lynda, and it was a premeditated crime. I don't care how old they were.
It has to be dealt
I have a child who's 9.
But she was always game for a laugh.
What those drugs, lass?
This is what's called milking the gag.
When she wasn't busy on this show, Lynda was treading the boards in the West End, most notably in the musical Calendar Girls.
We have got two of the original Calendar Girls to pop in with some presents. Please welcome Angela Baker and Trisha Stewart.
They're just amazing. I'm very tired.
Before a stop-off on the Strictly dance floor. Lynda went on to present several of her own documentary series, including Country House Sunday and My Tasty Travels.
It's every director who never gave me a job.
In 2014, Lynda's stellar career was recognised by royalty, where she was awarded an OBE for voluntary services to charity. In that same year, Lynda was diagnosed with bowel cancer, And in the summer, she decided to end her chemotherapy, explaining the heartbreaking decision in her book, There's Something I've Been Dying to Tell You. Lynda joined Janet and I in the studio for an interview that would stay with me and everyone in the room forever.
How would you like people to remember you?
Just as an honest person. I think honesty, and that's why people will say, oh, she tells everything, blah, blah. But we've been through this as loose women. You can't do loose women unless you're honest.
Yeah.
Little did we know that would end up being Lynda's final television appearance, because just days later, the news we never wanted to hear arrived. On October the 19th, 2014, Lynda sadly passed away.
As you all know, our friend and fellow loose woman Lynda Bellingham sadly passed away in her husband's arms on Sunday.
Lynda died in the arms of her husband Michael. She was just 66. Forever missing you, Lynda.
Oh, it's very emotional.
So emotional. You know, she was such a force on the show, and what you saw on screen was exactly how she was off screen. She was the ultimate professional, and she expected that back. And if you didn't give that back behind screen, you knew about it. You know, you think I'm bad for time. She was like, you'd know about it. If you were 2 minutes late, you'd get the wrath of Lynda.
Oh, really?
But we all respected her, and she was funny, and she was kind. And the main thing that she wanted to be remembered by was her honesty, and she was always honesty. She never said anything on this panel where I thought, she didn't say that this morning, or she's made that bit up. Everything about her was out on that plate, and she was loving, and she was generous. And it's not saying this just because she's no longer here. She was such a big loss.
Very, very much so. And I can only imagine just how difficult it was for you and Janet there, and indeed the entire Loose Women team doing that interview, because we all sort of knew, sadly, that this might have been the last time that she was going to be sitting in the studio.
The thing is, we did that interview with her, and we hadn't seen her for a while, so even when she came in that day, it was quite, you know, it was obvious how ill she was when she came in that day, not because of her mannerisms, but, you know, the way she looked. And it was hard not to be, you know, shocked. But then she was just Lynda, and she was making us laugh. But then they got me to ask her that question, how do you want to be remembered? And, of course, it was that question that made the whole thing real of she's going to die. And I hadn't, you know, sometimes you just don't let yourself think about it. So when I had to ask her that question, it just floored me. But she, again, just took it all in her stride and...
upbeat to
you know, and after that show, she said to me, you're going outside, aren't you, for a cigarette? And I went, no, because I was scared of her. I went, no, because she used to tell me off. And she went, yes, you are. And you know what? I'm coming with you. And she came out, and she was so anti-smoking. She'd given up years before. And I sat there and I was like, I don't know what to do. I feel bad about this. And she went, oh, darling, she went, I'm dying. I may as well have a cigarette before I go. And she was so much braver than the rest of us. And I just, I miss the aura of Lynda Bellingham. I really miss her so much.
I got to meet Lynda a few times, and after I did Birds of a Feather, the writers wrote a series for me called Odd Socks, and it was all set in a laundrette. And then I got the news that I wasn't well enough to do it because I had pancreatitis at the time. So they then said, Lynda Bellingham's going to take over your role. So I said, well, I'm very happy with that because I love Lynda Bellingham. And she took over my role and was amazing at it as well. But she sent me the most beautiful bunch of flowers and said to me, I'm really, really sorry to hear that you're not well, but I hope I do you proud when I take over your part.
That's so gracious, isn't it?
She's so gracious.
It's just old-fashioned gracious.
And professionalism. We've had hundreds of comments from the viewers at home with lovely memories of her. Claudine has wrote in to say she was a wonderful panellist on Loose Women. She was the star of the show, always sharing her stories and her family. I also remember her on the Oxo adverts as well. That's, for me, the memory, growing up, seeing her like that. She goes on to say, may her soul rest on, my heart and soul condolences go out to her family and close friends. I'm always thinking of her while I'm watching loose women. Oh, that's lovely. And then there's a lady here, Jane, who actually came into the show. She said, I came in to be in the audience many moons ago, and Lynda was on the panel, and when the breaks were on, she was telling us her naughty jokes, and her radiance just shone through. It's a great memory of a lovely lady.
Someone else who was very good friends with Lynda, of course, for many years is our Denise. She's busy filming this week, but she sent us this message.
Hi there. I, like everybody, cannot believe it was 10 years since we lost our beloved Lynda. And it's because she was such a life force. I can feel her energy around us still. I would love to have done a little video for you today telling you a few stories about Lynda Bellingham and the things we got up to, but I can't because we would be taken off the television. So I just want you to know that I loved her very, very much. I was very honoured to do a speech at her funeral. It meant so much to me. It did have to include a few dirty jokes at her request, but anyway, we miss her dearly and she will remain in my heart forever.
Time now for some more special memories of Lynda Bellingham. It's her close friend, Christopher Biggins, and her on-screen husband from All Creatures Great and Small, Christopher Timothy. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. And we all got a bit emotional earlier, obviously, and there's a great deal of sadness when you think you've lost someone for all of these years, but yet we've got to remember Lynda the way she wanted to be remembered, and that was for her sense of humour, Christopher.
She was
her love of life.
Possibly one of the funniest women I've ever met, apart from you. No, she was fantastic. I mean, she was really wonderful. And I was thinking of, we've been talking about in the dressing room jokes, but we can't tell any jokes she told, except that one is she used a terrible cod French accent. She talked it like that, and she told the joke, and it involved the word probably, which that's all, and that was about 15 times she said probably, probably, and it involved a grand piano, and that's all I can say. But it was hysterical, and funny enough, at her funeral, I thought of that joke and her telling it, because, you know, funerals, and I wore a pink suit, because I think funerals should be a tribute to that person. Exactly. And that's what's so wonderful about it. She was fantastic, wasn't she?
Absolutely irreplaceable.
Yeah. I went to all of her weddings, too. She got married 3 times. And, in fact, her second husband, Nunzio, there was a restaurant that Nunzio was working in called La Familia in Fulham. Yeah. And we both went to the restaurant, and that's where we met him.
Oh,
yes, and then I was there when she first met him. It was a toss-up between which phone we would get, actually.
Whenever I said to her after Luce, "What are you doing now? Where are you going?" Meeting Biggins.
Yeah, well,
always partying.
We did, and she was, you know, the wonderful commercial she did for Oxo Cubes. I mean, she was a wonderful cook.
Yeah,
I mean, she really was,
cooking.
and she loved Sunday lunches and everything. She was just exceptional, and she had a joy for people. And of course, the most wonderful thing that ever happened to her out of all her marriages was having 2 gorgeous sons.
Yeah.
And they're both wonderful, and we see them, and it's fantastic.
Christopher, I know that certainly did work alongside her on screen. I mean, she was always a very loyal, supportive ally, really. She would always have had your back, and you felt like a better person for having known and worked with her.
Yeah, my life was better for having her in it, that's for sure. She had an untenable task to take over a part that had been so iconised, and she fell into it like a fish in the water. She was just wonderful. The thing about Lynda was that there was no bull, not ever, about anything. She was trustworthy, she was loyal, she was very, very funny. She was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And when I think about her, when we talk about her at home, which is at least once a week, if not twice, we laugh. Most of the time it's laughter. And she always, when things were taught in the studio, when things went wrong, and things do, you know, it's hard to believe, but when things are not as well as they're about, it was always Lynda who, with a joke, which is unrepeatable. She was adored by the crews, without exception. Everyone loved her. And she was, in a way, in inverted commas, she was one of the boys.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I can't tell you any of the jokes she told. But she was just adorable. And we were talking earlier about the funeral, and at the funeral, I was talking about her, and the boys were sitting just there, and I was trying to be light about it, and it was a very emotive time, but there was also a great deal of laughter. With the memories that everyone came up with, that you all came up with, were funny memories, and it was just so good. And at one point, the boys, well, one of the boys, Michael, was crying, and instead of concentrating on what I was doing, I suddenly thought, I didn't mean to upset him, and I spent at least 5 minutes consoling him and thinking, this is not what is required of me at Linda's funeral. It really isn't. And it ended with very, very emotive, of course, but still with great joy. And just as the coffin was lifted and they began walking out of the church, over the tannoy came a famous recording of "There's no business like show," and the place just fell apart.
It was brilliant.
Joyous.
But I think also she was a brilliant actress.
Yes.
I mean, she played in a wonderful Russian film. She played the Tsarina, I think it was, and she was fantastic in that. And that's what we tend to forget because of her ebullience and her fun of life. But she was a really, really good actress.
Amazing. And then when you talk about this sort of natural love that she exuded, we felt that through an advertisement.
Yeah.
We grew up thinking
different
that she was like
generation.
exactly.
And you got that maternal sense from her. And to hear she really was the hostess with the mostess, and it was authentic as well.
Absolutely.
I think it goes back to that thing of you saying what you saw is what you get. You know, there was no hidden agenda, and
And she was so much fun, but her professionalism as well. Was off the scale. Like, she could be friends with all of you, and she genuinely was. She, like I said, she was so professional, but she expected that back. And if you didn't give that back, or if she thought you were slacking, you knew about it. And I loved that about her.
Weren't you having a coffee with her when you found out about her diagnosis?
Yeah, we were rehearsing a play called The Passionate Woman. It was a read-through, and it was going to star Lynda. There were other of us who were in the play, but it was her play. And it was a play I'd seen, and it was a really good play, and it was Kaye Mellor, rest her soul, who had written it and was to direct it. And we did the read-through, and Lynda was going to be something sensational. She really was going to be... Couldn't wait, just couldn't wait. And we chatted afterwards, and I think we went for a drink in a restaurant somewhere, then everyone was going about their different... whatever paths they were following. And I said to Lynda, where are you off to? And she said, I've just got an appointment with a doctor. I've got this pain. And I said, you know, what do I know? I said, well, it's bound to be OK, but I hope it's OK. And I'll see you at rehearsals. And that was that. And within a week, a phone call from Kaye Mellor to say, I'm really sorry to say that Lynda really is quite ill. And so we're postponing the play. And, of course, the play, in the end, was cancelled. But... it would have made one hell of a mark had she done it, without doubt.
Yeah. She was so positive, though, wasn't she?
That's right, about everything.
Her diagnosis, you know, which is a horrific thing to hear. You know, she was very strong, and she, you know, she told everybody, and she was going to fight it. And, you know, and she did fight it.
She did.
And, you know, towards the end, it was I mean, I'm seeing on this programme the last thing she did.
But and a lot of that was the strength of her friends and her family, and indeed her sons, like we've mentioned. And we're very lucky that the boys have sent us a message. This has been voiced by Michael, and we thank him very much for this. This is a lovely tribute to Lynda.
First of all, my brother Robert and I would like to thank Loose Women and everyone associated with the show for remembering our dear mother today and supporting us over the years. Furthermore, we thank all the viewers of the show who loved our mother and celebrated her huge body of work during her life and after her passing. Not a day goes by that we don't think about Mum. How incredible that after all the years, people still want to remember her and celebrate her. We are bursting with pride. We remember Mum with joy in our hearts and a smile on our face. My brother and I leave you with the words we spoke at her funeral 10 years ago. Words she herself would tell us all the time, and words we remember daily. Tomorrow is another day, my sons. Onwards and upwards. And remember, don't let the buggers keep you down.
Well, thank you to Michael and Robert and everyone that has paid tribute to Lynda today, to Biggins, Christopher, Timothy, Denise, Nadia and Kaye, you at home, but most of all, thank you to you, Lynda Bellingham. And this is for you.